Hey there, it's Ari Witten and welcome back. In this second Energy Blueprint Masterclass, I'm showing you a powerful, science-backed strategy to dramatically increase your energy levels by building your cellular engine. That's the capacity of your cells to produce energy. In our first video, we talked about several secrets of fatigue and energy enhancement that are critical to understand. And then I gave you 6 powerful strategies to start improving your energy levels right away. In this video, I'm going to show you what the cellular engine is, how it controls your energy levels, and how to literally make it 50 to 200% bigger and stronger than it is now. This is like taking out your body's current engine and replacing it with a bigger and more powerful engine. We're also going to talk about the 2 most basic causes of fatigue issues and why one of them is overlooked by almost everyone, even natural health and functional medicine doctors. We're also going to talk about the world's best kept longevity and disease prevention secret that also translates into massively greater energy levels, why your body's energy generating systems literally shrink and shrivel up as you get older, leading to over 1 in 3 older adults reporting being chronically fatigued, and how to prevent that from happening. We're also going to talk about a revolutionary new understanding of stress that will likely blow your mind. We're going to talk about the hidden reason behind why people lose their resistance to stress and become fragile and easily overwhelmed by stressors, and how to massively increase your body's resilience, which is a critical piece of the puzzle of increasing your energy levels. And I'm going to give you a powerful practice that takes just a few minutes each day that can massively increase your energy levels. And as an added bonus, how to track your improvements to literally watch your body's energy generating systems grow stronger and stronger. Want to know how to do all of that? I thought so. I believe that this is perhaps the single most important factor in overcoming fatigue and increasing your energy levels. And it's probably the least known and least understood factor by my fellow health practitioners. Also, a quick personal side note, this is absolutely my favorite topic and I love geeking out on the science here. This is a big area of passion for me and it's one of the biggest secrets to success that so few people are even aware of. I know you're gonna love this. So let's get into it. If you want to understand fatigue and how to increase your energy levels, it's all about this. These are your mitochondria, and they are the cell's battery, the power plants in your cells. If you took a high school or college biology class, you probably remember your teacher talking about these guys as the powerhouse of the cell. So without mitochondria, you have no energy in the cell. And without energy in the cell, cells cannot do any of the things that cells do. So this is fundamentally how mitochondria work at the most basic level. It's more complex than this, as we're going to see later in this presentation. There's a lot more to mitochondria than this, but this is the basic idea that you were probably taught in your biology classes in high school or college. Mitochondria take in fuel, primarily carbs and fats, and they turn them into something called ATP, which stands for adenosine triphosphate. And that is basically energy at the cellular level. That's what powers your cells, this ATP. Now, think of the importance this way. At the most basic level, we have cells, and then we have groups of cells that are tissues, and then tissues compose organs, which compose organ systems, and you, the trillions of cells of you as an organism, as a human organism, are basically a collection of these organ systems, organs, tissues, and trillions of cells. Virtually all of those trillions of cells are powered by mitochondria. So, importantly, when mitochondria dysfunction, everything has the potential to dysfunction. They are powering everything from your brain, to your heart, to your liver, to your muscles, and much, much more. As I'm going to show you in this presentation, mitochondria are the crux of health, energy, and longevity. Let me give you a quick idea of the role of mitochondria and how important they are in overall health, disease prevention, longevity, and energy levels. Here's a study called The Role of Mitochondria in Health and Disease, and they go on to describe a role of mitochondrial dysfunction in obesity, type 2 diabetes, and aging. Another one, mitochondrial content is central to nuclear gene expression, and they found that when failing mitochondria place the cell in energy crisis, there are major effects on gene expression affecting the risk of degenerative diseases, cancer, and aging. Another one, mitochondria in sickness and health. Another one, mitochondrial dysfunction in Parkinson's disease, in cardiovascular disease, in cancer, in multiple sclerosis, in Alzheimer's disease, in obesity. Another one, mitochondria unravel the secrets of growing old. So now we're talking about the link between mitochondrial dysfunction and aging. Another one, the role of mitochondria in aging. Another one, the mitochondrial basis of aging. And they said, taken together, these observations suggest that mitochondria influence or regulate a number of key aspects of aging and suggest that strategies directed at improving mitochondrial quality and function might have far-reaching beneficial effects. So, are you getting the point that mitochondria are really, really important? Now, what about fatigue? Let's take a look at mitochondrial dysfunction in fatigue. Here's a study, Cellular bioenergetics, which is energy production by the mitochondria, is impaired in patients with chronic fatigue syndrome. Chronic fatigue syndrome is the symptom caused by mitochondrial failure. Another one, mitochondrial dysfunction and the pathophysiology of chronic fatigue syndrome, myalgic encephalomyelitis, as it's also often called. Idiopathic chronic fatigue, which is chronic fatigue sort of without any explanation, linked to impaired mitochondrial content and biogenesis signaling. Biogenesis is the creation of new mitochondria. In simple terms, chronic fatigue is linked to impaired mitochondrial function. Oxidative stress is a convincing contributor to idiopathic chronic fatigue, etc., on and on. Lots more studies like this showing this very clear link between mitochondrial dysfunction and both chronic fatigue syndrome and more mild states of fatigue. Here's a nice review article called The Mechanism of Mitochondrial Dysfunction During Chronic Fatigue. And they said, quote, since mitochondrial dysfunction relates to almost all kinds of diseases and fatigue is a common symptom seen in many kinds of diseases, mitochondrial targeted therapy is the best choice for the treatment of multiple diseases, including fatigue. So let me repeat this. If you want to understand fatigue, it's all about these guys. But it's more than just fatigue. Mitochondrial dysfunction drives fatigue and low energy states. It also drives fragility and loss of resilience or loss of resistance to stress, many chronic diseases, and accelerated aging. And we're going to talk about why that is. Optimal mitochondrial function, on the other hand, is the driver of high energy levels, high resilience, high resistance to disease, and increased longevity. In this video, I'm going to show you the most powerful way to actually regenerate your mitochondria and build them bigger and stronger, and even make more of them from scratch. So why are mitochondria so darn important? Aren't they just these mindless energy generators in our cells? They just sort of take in carbs and fats and they pump out energy. How could they be controlling so much about longevity, resistance to disease, and resilience and our energy levels? I want you to think about fatigue as having two fundamental causes. One is total body stress load, or allostatic load, which is just the combination of all the different kinds of stressors that you can imagine. So everything from psychological and emotional stress to toxins, to pollutants in the environment, to a poor diet, to sleep deprivation, to poor gut health, and many others. And then the second thing is our body's capacity to handle stressors. So you can visualize this like this. So the combination of lots of different stressors, and then the second big factor is our body's resilience systems, our body's capacity to deal with the stress load placed on it and maintain balance and homeostasis, leads to our energy levels. Now, there can be two different scenarios or different combinations here. Your main problem is just you have way too many of these stressors and too big of a total body stress load. Or you can have weakened resilience systems in your body, or a combination of the two. In most cases, we're dealing with a combination of the two. So let me simplify this, get rid of all those pictures, and just simplify it to this. So total body stress load, the body's resilience systems, that determines your energy levels. At the most basic level, these are the two key factors that lead to how energetic or fatigued you are. Now these factors, all these factors that are lumped into total body stress load, this is where almost everybody focuses all their energy. This is what most people think about when they're trying to improve their health. This is what most doctors, whether we're talking about conventional doctors or holistic or functional medicine doctors, almost everybody is focused on this. And almost no one is talking about or even aware of this. Now, at the core of this, at the core of our body's resilience systems and capacity to deal with stress and maintain health, balance, and high energy levels, is our mitochondria. So we can just replace that image with an image of our mitochondria. It's a slight oversimplification, but really not much. This is where it's at when we're talking about resilience and our body's capacity to deal with stress and maintain high energy levels. It's all about the mitochondria. Now, there was a breakthrough paper by a researcher that I consider basically a sort of modern day Einstein in modern medicine, and his name's Dr. Robert Naviaux, and he published a paper a few years back called The Cell Danger Response. And basically this is an envisioning
of kind of what I've been describing, an envisioning of the mitochondria as being critically important, the central hub of determining how all these sort of signals and stressors from the environment, how they get translated into things like your energy levels and your disease risk and the rate of aging. And here's a quote from him so you can get how important mitochondria are. He said, "Mitochondria lie at the hub of the wheel of the metabolism. Because mitochondria are also the concert masters of innate immunity and inflammation, it makes them uniquely positioned to help the cell decide whether to devote energy and resources to peacetime metabolism or cellular defense." This is the critical line here, whether to devote energy and resources to peacetime metabolism or cellular defense. So remember we talked about how in your high school or college biology classes you probably learned that mitochondria are the powerhouse of the cell, just sort of these mindless energy generators. Well, the big discovery of the last 10 years or so is that mitochondria have another key role that is just as important as their role in energy production. And that is that they are danger sensors. They're sensors of what's going on in the body. And in response to the signals that they're picking up, they can either shift more into cellular defense mode if they're picking up lots of threats or stressors or danger signals, or they stay in peacetime metabolism, as Dr. Navio called it, or energy mode, as I call it. Okay? Importantly, these two things are mutually exclusive. So the more that the mitochondria get shifted into cell defense mode, the more they're picking up on stress and danger signals, the more that energy mode gets turned off. And this is the fundamental driver at the cellular level of low energy levels. If you have the symptom of fatigue and low energy, this is fundamentally what's happening. In a healthy environment, your mitochondria are in peacetime metabolism or energy mode, cell defense mode is turned off. When they're picking up more danger signals, things like inflammation, things like psychological stress, things like a poor diet, things like sleep deprivation, toxin exposures, all of these different things can be sensed by the mitochondria, and the more that they are picking up various kinds of stress or danger signals, the more that they shift into cell defense mode and take energy mode offline. Now this is a spectrum. It's not on or off, it's more like a dimmer switch. So you can be in a sort of halfway state where your mitochondria are kind of producing energy and kind of also trying to protect the body, and halfway in cell defense mode, halfway in energy mode, or you can be more in energy mode and less in cell defense mode, or you can be full-blown in energy mode and hardly in cell defense mode at all, or you can be in full-blown cell defense mode. And what that looks like is severe debilitating chronic fatigue syndrome, where somebody's mostly bedridden, their brain's really not working, their body's not working. That's the extreme of mitochondria being switched off. The next key point, mitochondria are not just mindless energy generators or even just stress sensors. They also ultimately control something called your resilience threshold. And this is a term that I created to describe what the literature is talking about. But the basic idea is this: resistance to stress parallels the health of your mitochondria. So in other words, how easy or difficult it is for your body to be triggered into cell defense mode is determined by the strength and the size and the number and the robustness, the health of your mitochondria. You can illustrate this concept of the resilience threshold like this. The basic idea here is that the more mitochondria you have, so on this axis you have more or less mitochondria, the more mitochondria you have, the greater your capacity to adapt to various kinds of stressors while maintaining balance, homeostasis, and high energy levels. Because your resilience threshold is all the way up here. Over here, you have way higher of a capacity to deal with the stressors that are ubiquitous in the modern world. We're all being exposed to some degree of stressors. There's no eliminating that. So the more that you're over here, the bigger your body's capacity to maintain balance, maintain health, maintain high energy levels. The weaker your mitochondria get, the more you lose mitochondria and you have fewer of them and they become weaker, more fragile, more damaged and dysfunctional, the lower your resilience threshold gets, the lower your capacity to tolerate and handle and adapt to stressors, the easier it is for you to enter into stress overload where you start to experience symptoms and you start to get fatigue. Putting this all together, just two different scenarios here, same stress load, same total body stress load, but in this scenario, you have weak, small, fragile, damaged, dysfunctional mitochondria. In this scenario, you have big, healthy, strong mitochondria and lots of them. Same stress load. Over here, the mitochondria can adapt and handle that stress load maintain health, maintain balance, maintain resilience, resistance to disease, longevity, and high energy levels. Over here, these mitochondria are getting triggered into defense mode, and this is where you get fatigue, many chronic diseases, brain symptoms like depression, anxiety, and brain fog, and accelerated aging. It's critical that you get this. Being in this zone over here is the fundamental driver of fatigue, fragility, disease, and aging. This is the fundamental cause of chronic low energy levels and fatigue. A weakened resilience threshold combined with a trigger, which may be one significant stressor or just a total body stress load that is too high. It's the combination of those two things, a weakened resilient threshold, too high of a total body stress load. So if you have these symptoms that we talked about in the last video, fatigue and sleep problems, post-exertional malaise, trouble maintaining energy if you don't eat, and so on, you have brain symptoms like anxiety, depression, and brain fog. These are sure signs of a low resilience threshold, of weakened and dysfunctional mitochondria. Now, is there any science to back up what I'm telling you here? Yes, absolutely. Just to give you one example, and I'm going to show you many, many more. This is a great study looking at the link between the aging process and mitochondrial reserve respiratory capacity. What does that sound like? Reserve respiratory capacity. It's the same exact concept as the resilience threshold, just using different words. So here's what they say. If the energy requirement, like during a stress, when the body's subjected to various kinds of stressors, if the energy requirement supersedes what the reserve capacity of the mitochondria can provide, then you have problems. To simplify what they're saying here, a decline of the reserve respiratory capacity can increase the incidence of a range of pathologies normally associated with aging, one of which is, of course, fatigue. Again, resistance to stress parallels the health of your mitochondria, and the health of your mitochondria predicts your resistance to disease, your longevity, your resilience, and your energy levels. So if you want to double or triple your energy levels, prevent dozens of diseases, live to 100 and beyond, and make yourself resilient and build a high energy body, you must focus on rebuilding your mitochondria. In this video, I'm going to show you two powerful strategies to do exactly that. Now, first of all, let's talk about what actually creates this situation of a low resilience threshold. How do your mitochondria become weak and fragile and damaged and dysfunctional in the first place? And how do we lose mitochondria? How come we can have much fewer mitochondria than that other scenario I just showed you? So what's actually causing this, and why are we getting these weak, fragile mitochondria that are in this situation where they're in defense mode and throwing off all these free radicals? How do we get there in the first place? What creates this? Two fundamental causes of this situation. One is aging, and two is lack of mitochondrial stimulation. Aging, it turns out, is actually not that important of a factor. But there is some research linking it to damaged and dysfunctional and a decline in mitochondrial capacity. However, there's a caveat to it. We're going to get to that later. But let me just show you the link with aging really quick so you get it. So there's a number of studies looking at mitochondrial capacity in aging. And this study is specifically looking at muscle mitochondria and is talking about these findings suggest a substantial fall in mitochondrial oxidative capacity in aging muscle. Another one found that going from being young to middle-aged, they found a 40% decline with age in mitochondrial capacity. Another one showed about 8% decline in mitochondrial capacity per decade. Another one showed that elderly subjects had nearly 50% lower oxidative capacity per volume of muscle than adult subjects. So that's compared to not young people, but adults. Here's a chart illustrating the decline in mitochondrial capacity as you go from 20 to 40 to 60 to 80. So the basic idea here is, again, we accumulate mitochondrial damage and dysfunction and lose mitochondria over the years. Research indicates that nearly 50% of people under the age of 40 have early onset mitochondrial dysfunction, and virtually everyone over the age of 40 has it to a very significant degree. Think of it like this. Between the ages of 40 to 70, what that research I just showed you indicates is that basically this happens. Your mitochondrial capacity and number gets cut in half. In addition, it's actually worse than just this, because not only is the number getting cut in half, but the mitochondria that are present are weaker, damaged, dysfunctional, and capable of producing less energy. A similar thing happens from the age of 20 to 40. You're actually getting cut in half in terms of your mitochondrial capacity between 20 to 40, and then it gets cut in half again from 40 to 70. By itself, as you can imagine, this situation dramatically decreases our energy levels. but also it decreases our resilience to stress, it accelerates aging, and it massively increases our likelihood of having symptoms or disease. So that's the aging part of the equation. But the second part, lack of mitochondrial stimulation, is actually the big key. It's actually, believe it or not, despite what I just showed you, it's actually way more important than aging. So what do I mean by lack of mitochondrial stimulation? There are certain factors in our lifestyle that stimulate our mitochondria, that keep them big and strong and help us maintain lots of them. The loss of that mitochondrial stimulation leads to this. It leads to this decline over time, like we saw with aging. It leads to this decline from lots of big, strong, healthy mitochondria to much fewer and much fewer as time goes on. This is fundamentally what lack of mitochondrial stimulation does to our mitochondria. It takes big, strong, healthy mitochondria and turns them into weak, fragile, dysfunctional mitochondria. And if you have energy issues, you can be sure that this is a big part of your problem. Tying this back into the concepts we've been talking about, lack of mitochondrial stimulation is what takes you from here, from this scenario, over time into this scenario. It takes you from a high resilience threshold to a lower resilience threshold over time, where in this situation, it's much easier for the stressors of life, which we're all being exposed to, no matter how healthy we are, we're all being exposed to a significant amount of stressors in the environment. It makes it much easier for those stressors to overwhelm your mitochondrial capacity to adapt and maintain balance, and then trigger cell defense mode and start to push you into fatigue. So with that in mind, let's talk about how to increase your energy levels, the central goal if you are trying to overcome fatigue and increase your energy. What if there were a way to rewire your cells for resilience, disease resistance, longevity, and high energy levels? What if it were possible to reverse mitochondrial dysfunction and build a high energy body, to go from fatigued to high energy? In other words, if you want to overcome fatigue and increase your energy, this is the central goal. It is to go from here back up to here. Or, viewed differently, it's to go from this scenario to this scenario. So how do we do it? How do we actually make this happen? What I'm about to show you can do exactly that. And there's evidence that doing this can add years, potentially decades to your life, help prevent dozens of different diseases, from many types of cancer to diabetes to cardiovascular disease to Alzheimer's and many, many more, to improve your resilience and your resistance to stress and your ability to maintain health despite stress, and dramatically increase your energy levels. Most important one, of course, is to dramatically increase your energy levels. So what is it? What am I talking about? The answer is hormesis. What the heck is hormesis? Hormesis is the major key to enhanced health, longevity, and energy. It's one of the most important, if not the most important, strategy for energy enhancement. So let's talk about how to build your cellular engine, how to build your mitochondria. Hormesis is the process by which a mild or acute stressor, temporary stressor, increases resistance to other stressors and increases the health, resilience, and vitality of the organism in this case being you. It can increase resistance to a variety of stresses and stressors, not just the one you were exposed to. And that's a key point. So you can be exposed to a temporary dose of one type of stressor, and it can translate into adaptations in your body that make you much more resistant to many, many other types of stressors. This famous quote from Nietzsche kind of sums up the idea nicely. That which doesn't kill us makes us stronger. Another way to think about this is it's a transient stressor to the body that stimulates the body to adapt and grow more fit to be prepared for greater loads of that stressor and any stressor. Here's the key point. The more your body has been exposed to hormetic stressors and had the chance to adapt to them, the more stress tolerant and resilient and energetic your body becomes. So if all of this sounds like a weird concept to talk about stressors being a potentially beneficial thing, just consider that hormesis is actually more familiar to you than you realize. It sounds like this weird idea, but exercise, plain old physical activity, things like cardio, aerobic exercise, or weight training, or high-intensity interval training, those are all forms of hormesis. It's one type of hormesis, one of many, as we're about to see. Exercise is a stress placed on the body that increases resistance to a number of other stressors. not just physical exertion, but also it increases resistance to cardiovascular disease, depression, all sorts of other brain-related conditions and neurodegenerative diseases, diabetes, and so on. And by exposing your body to these forms of hormesis, your body makes adaptations that make it more energetic, more resilient, and healthier. Now, here's an important point to understand. It's not just exercise that creates this sort of metabolic stress and these beneficial adaptations. Lots of things do. And by exposing your body to these forms of hormesis, your body makes adaptations that make it more energetic, more resilient, and healthier, just like with exercise. So there are lots of different kinds of hormesis. This is not just exercise. So things like fasting, intermittent nutrient cycling, cold exposure, heat exposure like saunas, red and near infrared light exposure, which is something I recently wrote a book about, hypoxia hormesis, obviously exercise, oxygen bankruptcy, UV light exposure from the sun, dietary phytochemicals, which are called xenohormetins in the scientific literature, and xenobiotics, which are basically chemical substances that are foreign to the body. Even things like caffeine and many drugs would fall into this category. There are lots and lots of different kinds of hormetic stressors. And there's a huge amount of research on many of these. Just, for example, red and near infrared light, there's over 5,000 studies on this topic alone and the different types of benefits that it can have on the human body. There's a huge amount of research showing that these are key drivers of health and longevity and resistance to disease and improved mitochondrial health. Importantly, all of these different types of hormetic stressors work by producing a stress on the body, a stress on the mitochondria, a temporary stress that stimulates beneficial adaptations. So all of these things produce benefits, amazing benefits, by producing a temporary hormetic stress on the body. And by exposing your body to these forms of hormesis, your body makes adaptations that ultimately make it resistant to stress, resistant to disease, and more energetic. The failure to expose your body to the right amount of hormetic stress produces poor health and a weak, fragile, diseased, and fatigued body. In the past, it was the age of hormesis, and our ancestors lived during a time when hormesis was built into their lives. And we are biologically adapted to these conditions, and any deviation from them is potentially harmful to health. In other words, we need these stressors just for our cells and our mitochondria to function normally. But we now live in an age of anti-hormesis, where exercise is no longer a requirement, food is available whenever we want it, we don't have to deal with food scarcity or fasting. A junk food diet, excluding dietary phytochemicals, is the norm for most people, and we live in insulated, climate-controlled environments that are generally kept between 67 and 72 degrees, where we never get too hot or too cold. We like to keep it nice and comfortable. And the problem with all of that is that over time, these factors are literally fragilizing our body. It is the absence of all of these things that stimulate our mitochondria to be big and strong. And as a result of that, just like when you get a cast on your arm or your leg after you break a bone, and you get that cast off, what happens to your muscles? All those muscles are atrophied. They've shrunk from the disuse. The same exact thing happens inside of our cells at the mitochondrial level. When the mitochondria are not being used and stimulated, they atrophy, they shrink, they shrivel, they literally die off, and they become weak and fragile and dysfunctional. As a result, we have the fatigue epidemic, rampant diabetes and heart disease, depression, anxiety, and all sorts of stress-related diseases. If you want a high-energy body, then using hormesis on a regular basis is critical. Again, hormesis is powerful medicine. It might not be going too far to say that hormesis is the very basis of good health, disease resistance, and longevity. There's actually a number of longevity researchers who make that very claim. So what are the mechanisms behind what's going on with hormesis? What are these adaptations that we're talking about? Well, there are a number of different studies that illustrate this in different ways. There's actually dozens of different mechanisms involved. But fundamentally, the key mechanism of how hormesis works is how it affects our mitochondria. Hormesis revolves around the mitochondria. And this is fundamentally what hormesis is doing. It's taking these small, damaged, weak, dysfunctional mitochondria and building them back up into strong, healthy mitochondria. It's like taking out your cell's engine, this little two-stroke scooter engine, and replacing it with a much bigger, stronger, more powerful engine. Another way of explaining this is that your current cells may have, let's say, 500 mitochondria in them, which are these little guys here around the nucleus. What hormesis does is it allows you to go from 500 up to 750 or 1,000 per cell. When you increase the amount of mitochondria in your cells and the size and the power of those mitochondria, you can double the energy producing capacity of your cells. Bigger mitochondria and more mitochondria means a bigger cellular engine, which means disease prevention, increased longevity, increased resilience, and more energy. Hormesis is literally rewiring your body at the cellular level to do this. It's increasing the size and the number of your mitochondria and literally building back up your resilience threshold. So you're rewiring your cells to be able to handle stress while maintaining balance and homeostasis and high energy, as opposed to being switched out of energy mode and switched into defense mode and fatigue mode. Hormesis is what moves you from this scenario that we talked about earlier over here, and regular exposure is what keeps you here. Regular exposure to hormesis is what keeps your mitochondria strong and healthy and keeps them in high energy mode. Again, hormesis may be the single most important strategy to improve your energy levels. And as an added bonus, it's also one of the most important strategies to increase your resilience and longevity too. Now that's a bold statement. So is all of this just my opinion? Or is there any actual science to back this up? Let me show you some of the science. Here's a study called Hormesis Against Stress and Disease, When Less is More. And they said, and I quote, "Growing evidence suggests that hormesis is directly linked to an organism's capability to cope with pathological conditions such as aging and age-related diseases." Another study titled Stress to the Rescue, Is Hormesis a Cure for Aging? Lots and lots of research popping up with titles like this, because it's being increasingly recognized that this is a key, maybe the most important key to disease prevention and longevity. Another one, cellular stress resets lifespan profoundly. Researchers said here, but we discovered that when you stress mitochondria just a little, the mitochondrial stress signal is actually interpreted by the cell and animal as a survival strategy. It makes the animals completely stress resistant and doubles their lifespan. It's like magic. Another one, quote, "Based on everything we know, there's no substitute for these exercise programs when it comes to delaying the aging process. These things that we are seeing from hormetic stress cannot be done by any medicine." Here's another one, a review of the scientific literature called Hormesis in Aging. They go on to say, homeodynamic space, or the buffering capacity, or what you heard me here call the resilience threshold, is the ultimate determinant of an individual's chance and ability to survive and maintain a healthy state. A progressive shrinking of the homeodynamic space is the hallmark of aging and the cause of origin of age-related diseases, including fatigue. Now, here's the key part, why I explained all of that. Hormetic strengthening of the homeodynamic space provides wider margins for metabolic fluctuation. It raises the resilience threshold. Hormesis thus counterbalances the progressive shrinkage of the homeodynamic space, which is the ultimate cause of aging, diseases, and death and fatigue. Hormesis counterbalances that. Hormesis protects against the loss of the resilience threshold. So yes, there is absolutely lots of science backing up everything that I just explained to you. There's lots of science indicating that hormesis is the key mechanism in our ability to ward off disease, extend longevity, and maintain high energy levels. Key point, having multiple layers of hormesis in your life is a major key to optimal health and energy. Now, remember how I told you before that aging is one of the key drivers of the loss of mitochondria and mitochondrial damage and dysfunction? Well, I left out one key part of that story. There's evidence showing that this decline in mitochondrial capacity only happens in people who are not regularly engaging in hormesis. In other words, there's research showing that hormesis is the key to staying here, and that it's literally possible to stay with mitochondria in this state as we grow older. People who do not regularly engage in hormesis, which is over 90% of the Western world, are pretty much guaranteed to lose roughly half of their potential to produce energy between the ages of 20 to 40, and then again, it will be cut in half from the ages of 40 to 70. Hormesis is the only way to prevent this from happening. And it may be, again, the single most important strategy to increase your energy levels and fight disease. Two types of hormesis that I want to cover in this video: heat exposure, or saunas, and something called intermittent hypoxic training. With that said, why not exercise? The reason that I'm not going to cover exercise here, a couple things. One is that it's common. Everyone already knows about it. I don't need to tell you about something that you already know about it. There are specific types of exercise that can more effectively enhance mitochondrial biogenesis than other types. However, the main reason that I'm not covering it here is because people with serious fatigue often respond negatively to exercise. They often have that symptom we talked about before, post-exertional malaise, where exercise can often be counterproductive in many cases and can lead to a worsening of their symptoms. So what I don't want a lot of people watching this who are dealing with severe chronic fatigue to do is go out and, go crazy with exercise and actually make themselves worse. I want to teach you about hormesis in a very systematic and progressive way, using gentler forms of hormesis that are much more compatible with people with chronic fatigue and much more likely to result in lots of benefits without as nearly as high a potential as creating side effects or post-exertional malaise. So these are the two that I want to cover in this video. Again, many types of hormesis, about a dozen different types of hormesis that we talk about, and this is my favorite subject, so I like to geek out on all of the different types. But I want to just give you a couple here because I can't give you a 5-hour-long video right now and cover all the different types of hormesis, but let me give you information on these two. So a quick bit about heat and sauna exposures. There was an article titled Association Between Sauna Bathing and Fatal Cardiovascular and All-Cause Mortality Events that found something absolutely remarkable. They found massive reductions in cardiovascular disease and even all-cause mortality, the risk of dying from any cause, in direct proportion to the frequency that somebody uses a sauna and the duration that somebody uses a sauna. So this is showing as people go from using it one time a week, which is this line up here, and this is the risk of dying. You see it's going up, which means a higher risk of dying over this period of time, which is over the span of 30 years. And then as people use the sauna, they go from 1 time to 2 to 3 times to 4 to 7 times, the risk of dying goes down dramatically. Okay, huge reductions. Again, the same thing if you use the sauna for less than 11 minutes per time versus if you use it for greater than 19 minutes. A direct correlation between the higher the dose, the bigger the benefits, the bigger the reduction in cardiovascular disease and all-cause mortality. Importantly, if there were a drug, a prescription medication, that could do this, that could dramatically decrease your risk of cardiovascular disease and all-cause mortality, it would be hailed as a miracle drug. It would be hailed as the most incredible miracle drug ever created, and it would be prescribed to hundreds of millions of people. It would be prescribed to basically everyone, and your doctor would look at you like you are crazy, like you're totally out of your mind if you are not taking a drug that can do this. Okay? So what we're talking about with sauna use is an effect, a medicine that is much more powerful in terms of protecting against cardiovascular disease, mortality, and all-cause mortality than basically any prescription medication known to man. And this is just one example. There's other similar studies on neurodegenerative diseases showing a massive 65% plus reduced risk of neurodegenerative diseases like dementia and Alzheimer's, and many other benefits associated with sauna use. Let me just show you a little bit of research on the relationship with fatigue. So here's a study using sauna therapy in people with chronic fatigue syndrome. Waon therapy is infrared saunas, that's what they call it in Japan. The conclusion, these findings suggest that Waon therapy, sauna therapy, may be a useful and safe treatment for chronic fatigue syndrome. Now let me show you some specific examples of what that actually means. These are 2 case reports. Actually, this is one individual, and then I'll show you the next one on the next slide. One case report of the fatigue score at the start of the study when they first started 30 sessions of daily sauna use. So they did 1 sauna session per day over the course of 30 days. Here's what happened to fatigue for this person. They went from about an 8 average to about a 3 or a 4 average. Their fatigue was cut in half. Over here, they went from a pain score, a level of like body aches and pains, that was about an 8 to about a 2 over here. This person went from a fatigue score that was somewhere around, let's call it 7.5, around here, or 7, let's say. And then at the end of 30 sessions, they're down at a 2 or a 3. And then after the sauna is over, they're hitting some 0s and 1s. Over here, pain at the start was up close to 8 or 10 on average over here. And then halfway into the sauna therapy, their pain is already at a 0 and 1 level and then continues like that throughout the rest. Here are some other specifics from the study. They did scores before and after the sauna bathing on things like fatigue. Fatigue went from a 17 to a 3 for this person, 28 to a 5 for this person, and obviously greater numbers mean higher levels of fatigue. So they're going from high levels of fatigue to very, very little. Depression went from a 16 to a 0, for this person, a 38 to a 0. Confusion or brain fog went from a 7 to a 1. Over here, it went from a 22 to a 4, and so on. So massive improvements in energy, in pain scores, reductions in pain, improvements in brain function, improvements in mood, just from this one simple type of hormesis. 30 days of one single type of hormesis can massively improve brain function and energy levels. That's how powerful hormesis is. Now you have several options of how you want to integrate this information into your life. You may want to go out and buy a sauna, or you may want to find a local gym or health spa where you can use a sauna there. Maybe it's included in your gym membership where you currently work out, or you can find a place nearby where you can use one. The other option is you can buy it, and there are many, many good home options. You have full wooden saunas, or you have individual units which can be stored in a closet or under a bed. I've written a very, very extensive piece on this called The Ultimate Guide to the Benefits of Saunas. 22 science-backed benefits of saunas. That's an article, it's freely available. I'll link to it below this video in the summary document. So you'll have information if you want to explore details about the best ways to start doing this. But if you can't afford to buy one, try to find one at a local gym or health club, or even a community center often has one where you can use it for free. Now, since sauna therapy is sometimes costly, sometimes you have to spend money to do it, whether you buy a sauna or you use one at a local gym, I want to give you something that is free, that you can do starting right now, doesn't require any equipment, just you. Intermittent hypoxic training. This is something that's very little known, but is incredibly powerful. And basically, this just means using breathing techniques to induce low oxygen levels in the blood, to progressively train the mitochondria to utilize oxygen more effectively and induce a lot of these hormetic adaptations, these beneficial adaptations that we've been talking about. There are numerous confirmed scientific benefits to this type of training. So some of these benefits from intermittent hypoxic training, it induces beneficial changes in mitochondrial function. It increases mitochondrial biogenesis, which stimulates the creation of new mitochondria. It decreases inflammation in the body. It boosts immune function, improves exercise performance, increases nervous system balance, improves your sleep, increases mental calmness and toughness, increases your resistance to stress, and of course, most importantly, increases your energy levels. So let's talk about some of the mechanisms of how this actually works. Intermittent hypoxia training teaches your blood to extract oxygen more efficiently from the lungs. So this is at the level of the lungs. This is what's called an alveoli or an alveolus. It's a little air sac within the lungs at the smallest level, and this is a capillary, very small blood vessel where blood passes through, drops off carbon dioxide, and picks up oxygen. When you do intermittent hypoxic training, it literally remodels, it creates a stress here that remodels this interface between the lungs and the blood to help your blood extract oxygen more efficiently. It also directly affects your mitochondria and protects them from damage. It builds some of those internal antioxidant defense systems up to protect your mitochondria from other types of stressors. It also helps build your mitochondria in size, mitochondrial biogenesis. You're creating bigger, stronger mitochondria and more of them. Here's one study where they did a biopsy on the lung and heart tissues of healthy rats to look at how they adapted to intermittent hypoxic training. And they found this change in the structure of mitochondria called micromitochondria within mitochondria. And they say this is an additional adaptive mechanism for intermittent hypoxic training. So just these breath practices, which I'm about to teach you, literally change the shape and structure of your mitochondria. In Russia, intermittent hypoxic training has been investigated for more than 30 years, but initially, people, including the Russian Ministry of Health, were skeptical. Proponents of intermittent hypoxic training had to show overwhelming evidence of benefits. And in fact, this has been studied very, very extensively over there in Russia as a result of this. Clinical trials on more than 300,000 people suffering from such varied conditions as neurotic and psychiatric disturbance, heart disease, gynecological diseases, pediatric diseases, and many other conditions were conducted over this time and showed positive results. Yet, intermittent hypoxic training, most people have never even heard of it. even though it's very well known over in Russia. It's mainly known in the athletic world, where it's been successfully used by athletes to improve their fitness and performance for many, many years. Yet, it is the case that non-athletes may even get more profound benefits from this practice. In one study with healthy men who were not currently doing exercise, adaptation increased the total amount of work performed on a stationary bike by 27%. The maximal output of their heart increased by 15%. Their lung capacity increased by up to 40%. So this is making big adaptations in your body. Another study on 102 human patients concluded that intermittent hypoxic training may be a bona fide anti-aging treatment because it helps the body clean out damaged and dysfunctional mitochondria and replace them with healthy mitochondria, healthy, bigger, stronger mitochondria, among several other anti-aging mechanisms. So they go on to talk about some of these mechanisms here: rejuvenation of mitochondria, decrease of reactive oxygen species, that's the building of the internal antioxidant defense system, and again, increased enzymatic antioxidant defense, improved oxygen absorption, transportation and utilization, and so on. Lots and lots and lots of beneficial effects. To sum up, intermittent hypoxic training is a very powerful medicine, a very powerful form of hormesis to strengthen and build your mitochondria. So how do you actually implement this method? So this first exercise is something that you can do seated, either on the ground or in a chair. And basically, all you're going to do is you're going to do 30 to 50 breaths of rapid fire breathing through the nose. So what that looks like is, and you want to get a nice pulsation of your belly in and out as you're doing this. That's what it looks like, 30 to 50 times. Then breathe out all your air completely. Hold your breath as long as possible. Okay? Ideally use a timer and actually get an objective measurement of how long you're holding it. Hold your breath, take a deep breath in, inhale, and then go back. 30 to 50 breaths, again through the nose. Exhale completely, hold as long as you can, and you want to repeat that 3 to 5 rounds. Now, if you're severely fatigued right now, maybe start with just one. Start with 10, breaths, rapid breaths, and then just a brief hold. Assess your body's response if you're in a very weakened, severe chronic fatigue syndrome state. If you're more resilient and more energetic and you have much more mild or moderate fatigue, go for it. Go for 3 or 5 rounds, see how it feels. If you are mostly healthy and energetic, try experimenting with even more than that. And then over time, you want to build this up. So get a measurement of how long you're holding for and how many rounds you did, and shoot to increase that over the coming days during this training. The second method, which is one of my favorite methods, one of my favorite forms of hormesis, is to do walking breath holds. And basically the way that this works is you can simply breathe normally. You can also do the rapid fire breathing before if you'd like, but the way I like to do it is I simply breathe normally, and then I exhale completely all my breath. And then as I'm walking, like I literally do this while I'm walking at the beach or taking my dog for walks. I'm just walking, holding my breath, and I count how many paces I'm able to do before my body needs to breathe. If you want to step it up, you can try doing this while walking up steep hills and see how far you can get. Or you find a hill in your neighborhood and you count how many paces you can do and then challenge yourself to get even more paces over the coming days. So once you need to breathe, then breathe and try to return back to normal breathing as quickly as possible, to go from sort of gasping from that gasping for air to try to return to calm, normal breathing as quickly as possible. And then when you're ready, do another round. Exhale completely and then count how many paces you can go. Okay? You repeat this for 4 to 12 rounds. So you can do this while you're going for a walk around the neighborhood or a walk in nature or something like that. You can do it at the same time. The other really nice thing about this is you can do it even without a timer, and you can get this objective measurement of your mitochondrial capacity and your oxygen utilization capacity of your body. So you can get this very direct sort of measurement of your body's energy producing and utilization capacities, and you can see how it's improving over time. So if you do this today, right after this video, and you go practice this, let's say you get 20 steps or 30 steps or 40 steps before your body needs to breathe. Take a mental note of how many steps you got, and then tomorrow, see if you can get just a few steps more, maybe 5 or 10 steps more. And then over the coming days and weeks, keep practicing this and keep trying to build up that number and make it into a game. Have fun with this. Watch your body improve as you challenge it. So to recap, how to increase your energy levels. The central goal, this is what we're trying to do if we're trying to overcome fatigue and increase our energy. We're trying to go from here, weak, fragile mitochondria, not very many of them, and a low resilience threshold, back up to big, strong, healthy mitochondria and lots of them, and a very high resilience threshold. A body that is capable of handling the stressors of life while maintaining a high energy state. That's what we want. Again, resistance to stress parallels the health of your mitochondria. The health of your mitochondria predicts your resistance to disease, longevity, resilience, and most importantly, your energy levels. The only way to stop this from happening, this decline in mitochondrial number and size and mitochondrial capacity as we grow older, the only way to prevent this is hormesis. The only way to prevent this scenario of fatigue and brain symptoms and accelerated aging and loss of resilience is through hormesis. And the way to get back from this scenario to this is through hormesis. This is how you do it. So here's what I want you to do right now. Go ahead and download the PDF summary document below this video so that you can remember all of this critically important information and the energy boosting strategies that we've just covered. Then I want you to actually do it, this intermittent hypoxic training exercise right now for the first time. I want you to start doing this exercise every day, at least once a day. It'll only take you a few minutes, and if you do it consistently over the next week of this training, you'll start to see some really beautiful shifts happening. Put a reminder somewhere prominent like your bathroom mirror or your computer, use a Post-it note to make sure that you do this exercise every morning. I can't wait to share video 3 with you where I have even more strategies for you to supercharge your brain and rewire your brain out of stress, anxiety, and depression mode and into energy mode. Also, I want to let you know that if you're looking to start supercharging your energy levels right now, we've created the most powerful products on the market for human energy enhancement. We've got Energenesis, which is simply the most powerful supplement ever created for mitochondrial repair and energy optimization. It's got several compounds in it that literally physically repair and protect your mitochondria, as well as the most powerful compounds in existence known to stimulate mitochondrial growth and biogenesis, which is the creation of new mitochondria from scratch. Here are the 23 mitochondria building ingredients in Energenesis. So it's got NT-factor, phospholipid complex, it's got astaxanthin, it's got trans-resveratrol, it's got acetyl L-carnitine, D-ribose, creatine, CoQ10, cordyceps mushrooms, 2 different forms of magnesium, triphala, a powerful Ayurvedic herb that's a combination of 3 different plant compounds. It's got taurine, Panax ginseng, curcumin extract, R-alpha-lipoic acid, green tea extract, EGCG, PQQ, which is a powerful stimulator of mitochondrial biogenesis, quercetin, citrus bioflavonoids like hesperidin and rutin, N-acetylcysteine. It's got niacin and niacinamide to serve as NAD+ precursors, and it's got cacao. This is just an all-star list of mitochondria boosting compounds. Now, if you bought all these ingredients I just listed off separately, it would cost you about $400 a month. But we've managed to pack all 23 of these supplements into one formula, one powder, and get your cost under $100 for a month's supply. Now, this is not one of the typical supplements on the market that uses tiny, ineffective doses of ingredients just so they can create an impressive looking ingredient list with 20 or 30 different exotic ingredients listed on there. This is actually real doses of these 23 different compounds. So this is unheard of. Nobody else on the market is doing this. They're putting, 50 milligrams, 25 milligrams of substances that the actual effective dose is 500 milligrams or 1,000 milligrams. They're putting these tiny doses in there so they can list these ingredients on the label and say they've got them, but they're playing a game here. They're trying to fool you. So I'm doing things differently. I'm actually putting real doses of all of these compounds into one formula. Trust me, nobody else out there is doing things this way. This is the real deal. More than 20 supplements in one formula in real doses, all for about $100 for a month's supply. We also have our Energy Essentials and Superfoods formula with real doses of the most powerful vitamins, minerals, and cofactors for energy production, as well as the most powerful superfoods on the market for health optimization. It's got real doses of the most powerful forms of methylated B vitamins. It's got a complete multi-mineral formulation using the most bioavailable forms of minerals, and it's packed with superfoods like spirulina, chlorella, maki berry, acai berry, pomegranate, camu camu, acerola, and a full range of powerful bioflavonoids and polyphenols. And this, by the way, pairs amazingly well with Energenesis. So if you want to get started increasing your energy levels right now, you can learn more about both of those compounds in the links below this video.
Okay, so I will see you in video 3, where I'll be showing you strategies to supercharge your brain.